I hear that you guys want to hear a little bit more about how to take better photos. And basically, that is what I do for a living. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I teach grade 11 and 12 digital photography at a high school here in Ottawa, but I'm a self-taught photographer. So that means I learned everything from the internet.
Oh, I thought it meant you taught yourself.
Yes. Well, basically I did. I taught myself in the fact that I practiced, I learned some things online, and then I practiced some more. YouTube has been awesome. The reason I got into photography was that my now husband and I went on this big trip to Colombia in South America, and we wanted to document it. So we bought ourselves a DSLR camera, and was overwhelmed, and then basically spent weeks and weeks learning. And eventually I was so into it when I got back from the trip that I started taking workshops with other photographers. So I guess I'm not fully self-taught because they taught me a lot as well. But the internet has been wonderful to learn more things. But yeah, so that's how I got into photography. And my goal is always to just make photos that hopefully people want to look at, as well as teaching others to get awesome photos. I teach grade 11 and 12, like I mentioned, and I'm blown away every time with the creativity that students can get. So the sky's the limit on your photos, which is really exciting. So I've got a quote here, and it's from Ansel Adams, and he's a famous photographer, and he photographed landscapes in national parks in the US, and very famous. So his quote is, "You don't take a photograph, you make it." From what I take from that is that we all can take photographs, right? I assume that you guys all have some sort of device that can take a photo. You might even have a DSLR big camera hanging around somewhere in your house. Or not most, but a lot of people do. And at least, cameras on your phone, your iPad even. Anyway, so the difference is between just being able to take a photo and taking a photograph, I think, is just a little bit of intention behind it and a little bit more thought put into that photo. So the tips that I'm going to talk about are really just going to help you do that, is put a little bit more thought behind it, and then it's going to be just that much more interesting for other people to look at. The main thing I want you guys to think about is, what are you focusing on? So before you go to click the button, what do you want other people to look at? So you already have a vision in your mind, probably, right? You're already like, ooh, that's a pretty flower, or I want to take a picture of that person, because you're already interested in it. So how can you make other people interested in it? So what person or object do you want to focus on? And that's what I'm going to go back to after each tip. So this is the thing that I want you to think about the most by the end of this. So a few tips that I've got to go on. I can show you. So for example, we had s'mores over the weekend, and that ooey gooey marshmallow, just like, I almost couldn't stop to take a picture because it was so delicious, but I wanted to show it off. So if you look at that left-hand side picture, you'll see that I wanted everyone to focus on the s'more, but I kind of also wanted to have the fire in the background to give you a little idea of what it was in case it wasn't very obvious. Not everyone knows s'mores. I'm sure all of you guys do, though. On the right-hand side is a tulip. So I don't know if you've been to the Tulip Festival in the spring, but Ottawa has an awesome tulip festival with gorgeous tulips. So I wanted to take one of the inside of a tulip because it's a little bit different. And you'll notice, I hope that you can see it a little bit, but there's nothing around it except for that tulip. So that's what I wanted you to focus on. And really in this picture, there's nothing else you can focus on. But that's the first step. So to help you do that, the first tip I have is to remove background distractions. That just means once you figured out what you want to focus on, you want to make sure that there is nothing to take away from that. So that can come in a couple different forms. I can give you some examples. So if you look at these two pictures, I'll show you a few selfies in here just because, you know, I'm the most patient person to show this off and no one else will stand there for me. So I was in this room and it had a really cool red wall. So on the left, I took my first selfie, but you can tell that the light was right behind my head and it really, you know, it wasn't a great picture. So I just moved over and I used this cool black wall, or red wall, sorry. And there's nothing around my head. So it just gets rid of any distractions. And I just want you to focus on my face. So that's one way to do it. There's so many, if you look around your house, right, there's so many walls, blank spaces that you can use to move your person or move your object to get rid of any distractions that might take away from what you want to focus on. Some more examples I've got. So on the left, there are lemons and they're on the grass. Why? I don't know. I felt like I liked the colors beside each other. But you'll notice that the grass doesn't really take away from the lemons. It's kind of this pattern almost that doesn't distract you from what I want you to look at. Same goes with the picture on the right. I've positioned my sister in front of a brick wall, and you can tell that there is a pattern behind it, but it doesn't take away from her face. So uniform patterns are also useful. You can get a blank wall, you can get a uniform pattern, right? There's patterns everywhere. Lines are a good thing to look for. As long as there's nothing sticking out of the person's head or the object that kind of takes away from what you're looking at. So I took another selfie. I think this will be the end of the selfies for it. But if you look at the one on the left, I kind of have antlers coming out of my head, right? So it's obviously I'm not an animal. So you might have done this with the bunny ears right behind, but overall you're going to try and not have something protruding from your head. So in the next one, I just moved to the wall beside it, and I was wearing a pink shirt, so I thought it'd be funny to blow a bubble gum. It turns out I'm not very good at blowing bubbles with bubble gum. So something I've learned about myself. But you'll notice that it's kind of a uniform pattern behind me and no distractions. So you kind of just look at the bubble. So by getting rid of all the distractions, you'll be able to get the person you want to look at that photo to focus on what you want to focus on. And that's the goal, right? Or what you want to look at too, right? You don't even have to be taking pictures for other people, but you can take them for yourself. So that takes me to embrace negative space. Does anyone know what negative space might be? With a little raise of their hand, maybe. This usually comes in art school or art class. So once you get to grade 9, they often talk about negative space. But negative space is basically the blank space around what you want to focus on. So say you've got a flower you want to focus on, that's going to be the positive space. All the space around it is going to be the negative space. I'll give you some examples. So I'll get you to take a look at these ones. I think possibly the one on the right's covered a little bit, but I can share this presentation with you guys after. So if you look at the one on the left, there's nothing else you can see except for that frog. We had a frog in our pool, so my husband snapped this photo, and there's absolutely nothing but the frog to look at. And that blue around the frog, that's an example of negative space. So the blank space that's around the object you want to focus on. On the right-hand side is one of my quarantine projects, and that's a 1,000-piece puzzle. So I wanted you to focus, though, on the coffee mug. And you'll notice that there's lots of blank space around that table. So it makes sure that you focus on the coffee mug. And then secondly, I've got some puzzle pieces around. There's more in the bottom right corner. I'm not sure if you can see it. There we go. So you can see that in the bottom right corner there. And that negative space around it shows you, makes it stand out more. So it draws the viewer's eye into the coffee mug, and then secondary, the puzzle pieces. So that's the negative space. Another really good tip is If you are somewhere and you don't have a very simple background, try to find blank space somewhere. Look around you. It could be the sky. It could be the sky. It could be anything really where there's kind of like a gap between buildings or anything that's not distracting, and then move your object or your person in that blank space. That will be a good way to start to find it. And then you can also create a photo too, like I did on the right-hand side. The next one I've got is leverage the rule of thirds. So I don't know if you've heard of the rule of thirds, but to explain it very easily is a tic-tac-toe. I'm sure that you guys have all played tic-tac-toe before, and you've kind of seen a grid like this. The difference I have with this grid is that there are 4 red dots in the middle where the lines intersect. That is where us as humans, our eyes naturally go to. So normally in a photo, whether you realize it or not, our eyes go to one of these 4 points. So to leverage this, to use this to our advantage, why don't we put what we want to focus on in the middle of those intersecting lines? So here I've got a little photo, and I went to a llama farm over the winter, and they are adorable. Super cute to look at. There was a ton of them. I couldn't get one of them on their own. They like to be near each other. It was also cold, you know, winter in Ottawa is cold. But you'll notice that in this picture, I got the llama's nose right in the middle of that blue dot. That's showing the rule of thirds. So it's in that third quadrant. If you see, like the tic-tac-toe board is divided into 3 quadrants, right? So the top, middle, bottom, or you can go right, middle, left. But where they intersect is where you want to do it, because that's where eye goes. This technique is really good if you're taking pictures of pets or of people, and getting the eye right in one of those intersections is a good tip to do. But this is just an example, and although there's other llamas in the background, you really focus on this one llama because it's in that intersecting point. I've got another one here, a fall day in Gatineau Park, and I wanted you to focus on this maple leaf. Hopefully that's where you went first as well. You'll notice it's not quite in the intersecting lines of that blue dot, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Although it's called a rule of thirds, it's not really a rule. It's more of a generally accepted guideline. So you want to get your image, your focus somewhere in those lines if you can. And you know what? There's also been great photos that don't use the rule of thirds at all. So experimenting is good too. But here I've got close, and you still can tell that that's what I want you to focus on. I found that my photography, I always go to the top left intersecting lines. So I tried to find one that I took that wasn't. So here I used the bottom right, and someone had painted footprints on a railroad track. And I wanted to take a picture of that because I thought it was interesting. So I decided that that was the footprint I wanted to focus on, and I put it in those intersecting lines at the bottom right. This is really easy to do. So you can imagine that there's a tic-tac-toe board as you visualize what you want to focus on. But on any of the devices that you're taking pictures, you can just add this grid to it, so you don't even have to imagine. You can just line it up. So depending if it's on your phone or your camera, you just have to check the settings and put the grid view on, and that should help you. You don't even really have to think about it that much, and it just will be an easy way to get to draw the viewer's eye on what you want to focus on. Okay, so the last big tip I wanted to go through is to experiment. I mentioned it briefly before, but there are so many different things you can do to experiment, and photography is so creative. There's so many different things you can try. For example, here on the left, this is a weird decorative piece I have in a bowl in my house. Don't really know why, but I thought it might be cool if I zoomed in. So I zoomed in and looked at it, and it's kind of a little bit more interesting because I zoomed in. You still don't really know what it is, and that's okay. On the right-hand side, I saw this beautiful plant against a blue fence, and I thought the red and blue looked really cool together. When I first took the photo, I took it of the entire plant, and I didn't find it looked very interesting. So I zoomed in and I cropped it a little bit, and now you can see like the texture on the plant and a little bit more of the color stands out. So you can move in, so you can physically move in with your body, or you can zoom in using the zoom function on whatever device you're using to take the photo. Another one that I've looking at is on the left here. I got down on the ground to take a picture kind of looking up. This was an abandoned water park, and it was covered in graffiti, so fun and colorful, but I wanted to give a little bit different perspective, so I got down on the ground. Same with the one on the right. I was at a beach and I was lying in the sand, and I was like, oh, those trees are pretty, they're just blooming, pretty exciting. So I took a picture, and I thought it was very calming, and the colors were interesting. So I was down, literally lying on the ground. So that's another way you can do, you can get a different angles to get a little bit more creative and try some things. Here, food photography. Maybe some of you guys have been baking or cooking a little bit while you've been at home longer. Well, food photography is really good if you get above the photo. You can, in the past, I've actually put my plate on the ground. I've put it on the ground and I've looked down with my camera and, put my feet on the other sides of it so you wouldn't get it in the frame. I've also got on chairs carefully. And so food photography is a really cool one that you can get from above. You can try it with anything, right? So if you can get a little bit higher than what you want to focus on, that could be good. We're not living in a time of film. Like, I don't even know if you guys have even used a film camera before, but back in the day, you used to only be able to have a certain amount of photos, and then your roll was done and you'd have to wait to get it to develop. Now you can take 1,000 photos in a day if you want. You can, and then you can go through, you might hate all of them, or you might find a few that you really love. There's no reason why you can't just snap, snap, snap all the time. Just think about what you're going to focus on first. I wanted to share this as well. I don't know if you guys are on Instagram or TikTok, but there is this photographer named Jordi Kowalczyk. I'm not sure if I pronounced his name right, but he actually has videos that shows you how he gets these creative photos. So the one on the left, it shows him gluing dirt to a bottle, so it kind of looks like the perspective of the plant. And he shows you from start to finish how he did it, and I think he's got a YouTube channel as well. The one on the right, he made it look like the words are coming off the page of the book, and he also shows how he did that. So there's really cool creative things that you can do, and there's so much inspiration on the internet as well. YouTube is great, Instagram. I've actually found TikTok has really neat, quick, creative ideas too. So there's lots of different resources to kind of think outside of the box. I've also done light painting. So I put FS on the left for Farnham Street, and I made a little heart. So this was done last night in my backyard with a flashlight. So something you can do at night before bed, and all you need is something steady to use, steady to put your phone or camera on, and then you're going to slow down the shutter speed. I can explain that depending on it's going to be a little bit different depending on what device you have, so you might have to look it up specifically to what you're using. But I really just drew it I painted in the air, and I drew those in the air, and you can use glow sticks are fun. Sparklers are really cool. So it's kind of just fun to get outside and take some photos. So basically the tips I want you to do to think about is first figure out what you want to focus on. Get rid of background distractions. Embrace negative space, so the blank space around it. The rule of thirds, try using the tic-tac-toe grid, and then experiment. Although there's some rules and tips, rules are meant to be broken in photography. That's how you can try different things. And yeah, and I've got a little challenge for you potentially at the end, but does anyone have any questions?
Do you think you can benefit from photography, like as a life skill?
Absolutely. I think that it gets you to slow down and think about what's around you and slow down and maybe take in the beauty that is life, and sometimes, you know, the sorrow and all that things. It really can get some emotions. It also gives you some technical skills, so you can definitely learn how to use the cameras to your advantage, as well as the job market is going. A lot of jobs are going to require you to take your own photos for maybe some product you're making or build a website. All of these photos will help sell whatever you're working on, and even sell yourself, brand yourself, right? So if you know how to take a great photo of yourself, that's going to look good on a resume, right? So those are some ways that photography can help.
What's your favorite picture that you took?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh, I've been going through so many photos. I think the photos that I like the most are a little bit more personal because they remind me of a time and a place where I was generally having fun. So I really like photos of my friends and family. I have a little niece that I love taking a photo of. She's only 1.5 years. So I think photos that mean something to me are my favorite. But then if I were to go artsy, I like black and white photos a lot too. And flowers are so fun to photograph, and they don't talk back to you when, you know, you take your time to take a picture of them.
I took my mom's Facebook photo.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
That's great. Where was she standing?
I think she was on a couch.
Okay, that's great. And
It
she's
was
using
black
it
and
still?
white. Yeah.
Oh. And how did you make it black and white?
I adjusted the color.
Perfect. So do you use an editing program?
No, like on a phone, you can just tap the color thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The technology is making it so much easier. So that's another way you can experiment is with editing, right? So you can make things black and white.
Software.
Yeah, there's a ton of free apps that you can use on your phone.
Yeah.
Mojave video editor.
What is it, sorry?
Mojave video editor.
Oh, that's what you use to make videos?
Oh no, you can
No,
use
I
it
don't
to edit.
Oh.
Yeah, and make them. I don't use that.
Oh.
I use something else.
What do you use?
I don't really remember what it's called, but I use like Bandicap to make videos.
Bandicap. I'll have to check it out. I'm always trying to find an easy editing program for photos or for videos.
Mojave is pretty easy. You can put transitions and other clips that you've made. It's actually pretty easy if you use Mojave.
Mojave, okay. I'm going to write that down.
If you're using a Windows computer, it comes with like a basic editing software. You just search up video editor in the Windows.
Yeah. There's you could also like to record. You could also do like Windows G.
Windows G, okay.
But it's not the best.
From you guys. I do have access to the Adobe ones, but I find they're too big. Which I know if you guys go into Comtech in high school, you'll learn some of the Adobe programs, but I find them very big, but really powerful.
Do you find that with so much accessibility to learn about photography online, there's still a, need to attend school for it? Or do you think it's something that can just be done on your own time?
I think it could definitely be done either way. So I guess it depends on how you are as a learner and if you like it and if you're motivated to try it. So I was motivated and I learned a lot online and YouTube, but there's also so much out there and no one there to answer your questions while you're doing it. So I think that if you're good to try things and learn online, great. But I found I've learned quite a bit from actually going out and doing it with other photographers and having that teacher kind of there to answer questions in the moment is pretty helpful. And either way could work, but it's kind of like you have to pick one tutorial, one guide when you're learning on your own and start there because there's just so many out there.
I don't take a school for it.
You haven't taken school for it?
No.
No. It's probably not in most schools, especially in elementary school. But there might be an opportunity in high school.
We did have an assignment to do once.
Yeah. Photo
Involves
stories.
lots of photography.
You do lots of photography on your own?
The assignment involves lots of photography.
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's also just a useful skill to document the process of you making something, you doing something, to demonstrate what you've learned in any other subject too, right? If you're making a science project, you might want to take pictures of how from start to finish so that you can remember how you did it before, right? That could be a good way too. Yeah.
Your photo with the brie cheese and the blackberry, was that arugula?
It was, yes.
Did you make that? Like, was
My
that your little?
sister made it, yeah.
Looked delicious.
It was really good, and there's a little balsamic vinegar on it as well. A nice, easy. It was a little COVID-friendly appetizer, so you didn't have to touch the food. Yeah. Does anyone have any more questions? I've got a little challenge for you guys if you're interested in taking photographies.
Definitely.
Okay. I will again share my screen again and show you. Okay. So there we go. Okay. So my challenge for you is called the A to Z challenge. I'm hoping that maybe you'll start thinking about photography as you're just wandering around doing other things. And this project will also help you figure out what you want to focus on. So this challenge is to get an object or something that represents every letter of the alphabet. So an apple could be for A, or a balloon for B, or a candle for C. And then it gets difficult when we get to like X, Y, and Z, but that's where the creativity can come from.